God looked down and said, she needs this baby, and he sent him on Christmas Day.
Oh, and what a lovely way, because of what you're walking through with your husband, what a lovely way to describe him, that he was a Christmas gift to you. Hi, it's Carol McLeod, your host on the Significant Women podcast. And I want to start today's episode by asking you a question, a serious, heartfelt question. Here we go. When is too early to start celebrating Christmas? Well, if you know me, then you know my answer. It's never too early. We should be celebrating Christmas all year long. Today's episode combines two of my very favorite things, Christmas and Christian fiction. My guest today is Melody Carlson, the award-winning author of more than 250 books, including many best-selling Christmas novellas. Her stories have been the basis for several movies, including some on the Hallmark Channel. And I know you're going to enjoy our conversation. So lean in and listen as we get to know Melody Carlson. Well, Melody, I was trying to think of a word today to describe how I feel about our conversation. And I came up with two words. You'll appreciate them both because you're a wordsmith. I came up with delirious and giddy. I'm so excited to talk to you today, Melody Carlson. She's a best-selling author. She's written more than 250 books. Girl, you go. And she sold over 7.5 million books. My heart's just jumping out of my chest. I've loved your books for so long, Melody. So thank you for being my guest today on the Significant Women podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I just want to get to know you first. So we're going to pretend, Melody, that we're brand new girlfriends. We're meeting over a cup of coffee for the very first time. And I'm going to go digging for gold in your heart. I'm going to ask you some questions. So, Melody, when you were a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to be everything. I think that was part of the problem. And the solution, because I just explored every avenue and imagined every possibility. And then even, as a young adult, I didn't really know quite what I wanted to do. I came to faith after not living in a church home at the age of 15. And so I was just this hungry sponge, just soaking it all in and just wanting to know Christ more than anything. And that was just my obsession. And then as an adult, I was like I was as a child. I just kept bouncing around from thing to thing. But through it all, I love to write. And as a little girl, even before I could fully read, I was trying to write stories. So go figure.
Were you really? That's so interesting. I sent my first book into a publisher when I was 12 years old. Didn't know what in the world I was doing, but I thought I'd try. So there you go. Melody, let's go back in time when you were a little girl. What was your favorite book to read as a child?
Well, I remember the book that just really gripped me, and it actually brought me to tears. And so it's the first one I remember, and The Velveteen Rabbit. Mm. And I was, a pretty good reader, could read before I went to school. And my mom was a teacher at my school. And so sometimes I would wait for her to get done in our little library there, which didn't really have too many books. It was a real little school. And the librarian gave me that book. And I sat there in a chair and just read it from beginning to end, waiting for my mom. And I just sat there crying. Oh. And I was embarrassed that I was crying, but it was such a sweet story.
Yeah, I love that. Even as a little girl, you knew the power of story to move you. So obviously the Lord was already preparing you for what he had prepared for you. And that was to be an author. But Melody, you write a lot of love stories. Your books are always sweet and romantic. I want to know your love story. I want to know how you met your husband and when you knew he was the one. Give us all the down low on that.
Okay. Well, and the truth is, I've written a lot of other stories that weren't love stories too. I've written a lot of edgy, issues-based stories early on, but in my latter part of my career, I've gravitated more towards the happy stories, which usually have a love thread in them. But my husband and I, ironically, we keep thinking that we knew each other throughout our childhood because we grew up in the same places. We did the same things. He's just a little bit younger, like he's 9 months younger than me, but our paths, we know how to cross over and over because we have the same memories. Actually, his memory, he has FTD, which is dementia, and his memory is fading. But so anyway, I graduated from early and got a college degree early and went around the world and taught overseas and all this stuff. And then I came back. And I'd always had Young Life connections because that's how I got saved. And so I was volunteering in Young Life, and he was volunteering in Young Life for the same high school that we both went to, but didn't even know each other there. I mean, just because I graduated early and he was the class behind me. He was like a really good basketball player, but I never knew it. And so we just started hanging out. And I kept thinking of him as this much younger person, but he was the sweetest guy I'd ever met. And I had some opportunities with other guys and they just weren't quite right. And Chris was just the real thing. He just was, through and through, just sterling, good person. And he still is, even though he can't remember things. But, so anyway, we got married fairly young and we've been married now for 46 years and he's still the love of my life. But now I take care of him because he's fading fast. FTD is a really progressive, aggressive form of dementia.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Melody. Well, we'll certainly be praying for you and for him.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting calling to be a helper, to be a servant to the one you've loved for so long.
Yeah.
So I know that we'll be hearing more. I'd love to hear more about that in the days to come, to just talk about what it's like to be a caregiver. So what has God done in your heart, Melody, as you've learned to be a caregiver for the one you've loved so passionately all these years?
Well, he's taught me to slow down, which has never been my gift. Patience has never been my gift either. I've always been, to write that many books and to do the things I did, it's just not my style to just sit and wait a lot. It feels like, and so that's hard, but it's good. And being a servant, I felt like my husband was always a really natural servant. I mean, he is the most helpful, kind person. Everybody he was the most Christ-like person I ever had known. And just he never wanted any glory, and he just was happy. And that's one of the reasons I've done as well as I've done in my career is he has always been kind of behind me. I mean, that whole wind beneath my wings thing,
Yeah.
He's made a real difference. And now I'm getting to return the favor. And I don't think I'm nearly as good at it as he would have been if the roles were reversed. But, it's God's school of learning for me. So,
well, it really is. And, to be great in God's kingdom, we have to learn how to be the servant of all. So I know that the threads of greatness are being sewn together in your heart. And as I said, I personally will be praying for you as you walk this route that none of us would choose, but I know the Lord will be with you as you serve your husband.
Yeah, thanks.
Such a beautiful story. Well, the reason we're talking today is because you have a new book out. And it's out just in time for the holiday season. Yeah, you've got it right there. I love the cover, by the way, the Christmas tree. Now, Melody, I wanted to tell you that when I introduce myself, one of the first things I tell people is that I am a Christmasaholic. I love everything about the season. So I can't wait to hear about this new book, The Christmas Tree, and the message that's in the book. So just give us a brief summary of the background story that's in this book.
It's actually the Christmas Tree Farm.
Okay, got it. The Christmas Tree Farm. Thank you.
But the other works too. Well, in 2020, I live in Oregon, and in 2020, we had the worst wildfires Oregon, I think, has maybe ever had in recorded history, and burned down just miles and miles and homes and business along a river, along two rivers. Actually, we had three going at the same time. It was about this time of year in 2020. And it was, one of them was the river that we live in a town that's 2 hours away from where we had grown up. And my mother still lives there, and she was having health issues and stuff. And I was driving back and forth along this burnt area and seeing all these burnt out farms and Christmas tree farms and whatnot. And I started kind of just cooking up this story. Well, what if you had a farm there? And what if maybe it's a Christmas tree farm, but it's not completely burned down, but your neighbors are burned down. You still have half of your, and I just kind of started that whole thing. And so it's about this woman who goes home after living overseas and teaching. And then she goes home, and it's been her family's tree farm for generations. And Christmas tree farms are a big thing in Western Oregon. And so she's just looking forward to getting back there. But in the meantime, her grandpa and her dad, who ran it, have passed away, and her sister's running it. And it's quite run down, and it's partly burned. And the sister is fed up and has just had enough and doesn't want to do it anymore. So that's kind of the setup.
So part of the book deals with a little bit of the sibling friction between the sisters. So tell us that aspect of the story, these two sisters who love each other but don't quite see eye to eye on everything.
Yeah, they had quite a gap in their ages growing up. And so the younger one's the one they're dealing with it. And she's never liked farming or agriculture or country living or any of that. Whereas the older one, who's off traveling the world, supposedly with the guy that she was going to marry, but she doesn't. And then she comes home. Younger sister thinks older sister's just out having a good time, and she's home being the drudge, and she'd rather be doing that. And it also, just to make a little more friction between the sisters, their neighbor is trying to rebuild his totally burnt down farm into something else. And the younger sister, Addie, her name's Addie, and the older one is Madison. Addie has developed a crush on this neighbor. But it turns out this neighbor was Madison's boyfriend from high school.
Well, that's complicated.
It's complicated. And yeah, he's been married, and she doesn't exactly know. The older sister doesn't really know too much about that, but it kind of broke her heart long ago when he did. And he's got a couple of daughters, and one of them's with him. And they are developing a dirt bike park right next to the beautiful Christmas tree farm. And Madison is not very thrilled with the dirt bike park. Kind of messy and noisy, and yeah.
Well, I have to confess to you right now, whenever I start a book, I don't throw Rotten Tomatoes at me. I always read the last chapter first, because, if it doesn't have a good ending, then why should I read the book? So, but we can counsel about that a different day. So just tell us, without giving away any spoilers, do Madison and Gavin sort of develop feelings for one another? Are they besotted, as my grandmother would say?
I think their feelings never went away.
Oh,
and you have to find out what happened, and there's some untold story that unfolds, but it does make things complicated.
So you're not going to give us
I
much
even
info.
do another extra chapter. No, it ends happy.
Okay,
but
good.
There's an additional bonus chapter on christianbooks.com if people buy a certain version of it. And so there's even that, but I mean, it ends happy. I guarantee you all of my Christmas books end happily. And I think this is book 24 of the Christmas book.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, part of the book is how first impressions are not reliable at all. Talk to us about first impressions.
Yeah. I mean, we all, it's like we're wired to go by first impressions no matter what. And
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, in this case, you know, the younger sister Addie is pretty superficial, and she's, you know, not really, she would go by first impressions. We'll just say that without judging her. But yeah, there's a little more depth to Madison and Gavin as well. And yeah, they both they know how to dig a little deeper. They're a little older and a little more experienced. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see how that all unravels in your book. But let me ask you this, Melody. When you write a book, such as The Christmas Tree Farm, and of course the others you've written, are any of your books autobiographical? Do any of your books sort of smack of something you've gone through in life?
I would guess that almost everyone has some little snippet, and some have more, some have less. It's always really hard for me, even, you know, after the book is written, to put my finger on what it might be. And as I'm writing it, usually I'm just oblivious. And my mom, bless her heart, who passed away a couple of years ago, she would always see things. She'd go, "Oh, yeah, you might be right." But to me, it was unconscious. You know, it was just came through.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's hard to separate ourselves from the words we write on the page. Well, we'll get back to my conversation with Melody in just a bit. Melody Carlson. Isn't it amazing that her initials are MC? Melody Carlson. Merry Christmas. Yeah, I had to tell you that. I couldn't believe when I noticed that. But listen, Melody and I both agree that we should be celebrating Christmas all year long. And we also both agree that books make great gifts. Let's face it, most of the people in our lives have enough stuff, enough candles, enough bubble bath, enough dish towels. Giving cash or gift cards can sometimes seem just a little impersonal, but giving the gift of a book, well, you just might change somebody's life when you give them a book. It's a way of saying, I saw this and I thought of you, and I hope that it helps you on your life's journey. One thing I love to do is making a book a part of every gift that I give, whether it's a shower, a birthday gift, a baby present, a graduation gift. If you know me, you're probably going to get a book from me. Every Christmas, I wrap up my Christmas devotional, Let There Be Joy, with some fuzzy socks, a soft fleece blanket, or an oversized Christmas mug. Who wouldn't want to open that in the days leading up to the Christmas season? So, to get your own copy of my brand new Christmas devotional, it's just been re-released this fall, Let There Be Joy. Instead of 25 days, it's now 31 days. So it will take you all the way to the end of the calendar year. You can order Let There Be Joy on Amazon, on christianbooks.com, or at my website, carolmcleodministries.com. Give the gift of a great book today. Now let's get back to my conversation with Melody Carlson. So, Melody, when you write a book like this and you come up with a plot and with characters and with a setting, do you also come up with an intrinsic lesson that you're intent on teaching through the storyline, or does that come later as the story unravels?
I think whether I plan it or not, there is a certain element that I hope and I pray that this element is in all of my books. And it's about grace. And I think that's another thing where, you know, first impressions can be real grace killers, because people are quick to snap to judgment with a first impression. You know, sometimes you just think you don't like somebody. Sometimes your first impressions are right, but most of the time, I don't know. And so grace in this situation of this book, you know, she needed a ton of grace for her sister, actually for her mother, for her neighbor, and and it didn't all come real easily to her, even for the guy who broke up with her over in Mongolia. She gets a lot of lessons in grace, but I do think that is kind of intrinsic to most of my stories. I hope so, anyway.
Yes, I can testify that it is, Melody. And man, we all need more grace, don't we? We all need to cultivate that gift of grace toward others because we've received grace. So we have to be able to give it to the world around us. Okay, so Melody, the name of the book is The Christmas Tree Farm. But so now we have to talk about Christmas, okay? So what is your favorite Christmas song?
Song?
Yeah.
Gosh. It kind of just depends on my mood. I mean, like so many things, like, if I'm in a really jolly, cheerful mood, I mean, I might go for something like Deck the Halls. But if I'm more worshipful, maybe Oh Holy Night, I think I'm just one of those people that I can write in all the different genres, and I can enjoy like lots of doing different things. And books, same thing. Reading, depends on my mood.
Yeah.
Song, same thing.
Okay. What's your favorite Christmas recipe or treat to eat?
Well, I'm not a real sweets eater, but I do like, and I used to make these a lot, and I don't think I made them last year, but my mother used to make them. They were called Russian tea cakes.
Yes.
And they go by some other names too. And they're just sort of the buttery, crunchy we always used walnuts because we had a walnut tree, rolled in powdered sugar, and they get you all messy, but they're so good with coffee.
Yeah, they are. So they melt in your mouth good. Yeah.
They do.
Okay. One final question about Christmas, Melody. What's the best gift you've ever received?
My husband. He was born on Christmas Day.
What?
And I always say I was like this 9-month-old baby living in a very dysfunctional home in San Francisco with an alcoholic father. And the marriage was just about to break up for good. And God looked down and said, she needs this baby. And he sent him on Christmas Day.
Oh, what a great answer. And what a lovely way, because of what you're walking through with your husband, what a lovely way to describe him, that he was a Christmas gift to you. Well, Melody, as you know, the name of my podcast is the Significant Women Podcast. So who have been the significant women in Melody Carlson's life?
To go back, my grandma, who helped raise me, my mother, who was this really hardworking single mom who did some amazing things with, she never remarried. She just raised her 2 girls. And then I had a couple of amazing, good mentoring friends along the way. And then in my critique group, writer friends too. So there's been a lot of women. I don't know. I'm not going to just pick a famous one. I mean, there's famous women I read, but It's the humans that were not the humans, but you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah. And Melody, it's amazing. Whenever I ask that question, invariably it's somebody's mom or grandmother or second grade Sunday school. Like nobody names the big names. They always say the ordinary women who walked through life beside them. Well, before we go, Melody, would you pray for my listeners?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Lord, I know we're all in different places in life, and we are all so significant to you. Significant isn't even a big enough a word. We're your beloved daughters, and you've created us for specific purposes. And I just pray that each one listening will let you lead them in that and discover those purposes and live the life that you have designed for them.
Yeah. Well, if you've been encouraged or touched by today's episode, would you take just a minute more and leave a rating or a review on the platform on which you listen to this podcast on? Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Carol McLeod Ministries. There are all sorts of Bible studies, conferences, podcasts, on our YouTube channel that I know would encourage your faith, would bolster your heart for serving Jesus Christ. Now, I'd love to connect with you and hear your story. So email me, carol@carolmcleodministries.com. I read every single email that comes into the ministry, and we have a whole team of intercessors who would love to pray for you. As always, don't forget to download our free mobile app. Just go to the App Store on your smartphone and do a search for Carol McLeod Ministries. Our app is a great way to stay in touch with the ministry as well. Now, you can connect with Melody Carlson on social media or at her website, which is melodycarlson.com. I know she would love to hear how this episode encouraged you. And don't forget to grab a copy of her latest book, The Christmas Tree Farm, to add to your Christmas library. Well, before we end today's episode, you know what I want to do? I just want to read you some verses from the Christmas story. It's a story that never grows old. Read with me from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus, the census be taken of all the inhabited earth. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone was on his way to register for the census, each to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David, in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him and who was with child. While they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. My friends, it's true. I'm head over heels in love with the Christmas story. I love the wonder and the meaning. I love the miracle that Christmas has ushered into the darkness and confusion of planet Earth. When Jesus was born, the angel said, "Let there be joy." I'm utterly amazed that God left eternity and entered into time simply because of his great love for me. I stand in awe at the manger. I stand there in humility and in gratitude that Christmas actually happened, and it happened for me. I wish I had been there to hear the angels sing, to see the shepherds joyfully dance, and to gently ask Mary if I could hold her baby just for a minute. I wish that I could have kissed his sweet face and smelled his breath, so fresh from heaven. Christmas is just too miraculous, too eternal, and too significant to confine it to a calendar month of a scant 30 days. Christmas was always meant to be a lifestyle, not just in December, but in March and August and October. Remember, my friend, you are significant because of Christmas. You are significant because Jesus was born for you.